In August 1914, the European continent descended into an industrialized war of attrition, a conflict characterized by unprecedented mobilization and destruction. Long before the trenches stabilized on the Western Front, the rival empires had formulated complex naval strategies designed to secure command of the Atlantic and North Sea, investing vast economic resources into the construction of massive capital fleets. The financial capital expended on these modern armaments would ultimately surpass the tangible material losses of the war itself. It is a grim historical irony that the subsequent Spanish influenza pandemic would claim more lives than the combined total of artillery, small arms, and chemical weapons deployed during the 4 years of hostilities. This global catastrophe served as a stark reminder of the tragic diversion of human innovation away from preservation and toward destruction. Driven by the pressures of global imperialist competition and the necessity for territorial expansion, the great powers found themselves locked in an inescapable spiral toward conflict, culminating in an unprecedented naval arms race. The first true test of this modern naval architecture occurred in the gray waters of the Heligoland Bight, where British squadrons engaged the cruiser forces of the Imperial German Navy. At this early stage, the pivotal engagements at Coronel and the Falklands had not yet taken place, and the vulnerabilities of armored cruisers to submarine warfare, later demonstrated by the tragic loss of Hogue, Cressy, and Aboukir, were not yet fully understood. On August 28, 1914, the theoretical doctrines established over decades of peacetime preparation were subjected to the harsh reality of combat, barely a month after the collapse of the 19th century European balance of power. This engagement would serve as a classic demonstration of the friction of war, illustrating how meticulously crafted operational plans frequently disintegrate upon initial contact with the enemy, validating the famous maxim of Helmuth von Moltke the Elder. To understand the genesis of this confrontation, one must examine the strategic philosophies of its primary architects, Admiral John Jacky Fisher of Great Britain and Grand Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz of Germany. For the British Empire, maritime supremacy was an existential necessity rather than a geopolitical luxury. At its height, this global empire encompassed over 400 million subjects bound together entirely by maritime trade routes. The preservation of these sea lines of communication required a massive, continuous naval presence. While merchant shipping drove the imperial economy, the Royal Navy provided the security framework. Controlling millions of square miles of ocean demanded fast, autonomous, and heavily armed cruisers capable of protecting friendly commerce and neutralizing hostile raiders. The strategic memory of the American Civil War, specifically the exploits of the Confederate raider CSS Alabama, which had inflicted millions of dollars in damage across 75,000 miles of operation, haunted British naval planners. To prevent a modern recurrence of such commerce destruction, the British established a global network of naval bases, ensuring that cruisers could be deployed rapidly to escort convoys or hunt down hostile surface raiders. This strategy was deemed non-negotiable by the British financial elite who financed the fleet. Concurrently, British doctrine remained wedded to the concept of the decisive fleet engagement, rooted in the land campaigns of the Napoleonic era. This philosophy dictated that the ultimate objective of naval warfare was the total annihilation of the enemy's main battle fleet in a single concentrated action. Achieving total command of the sea would render all subsequent maritime operations secure. This doctrinal fixation was reinforced by the historical legacy of Nelson's victory at Trafalgar in 1805, and further validated by the shocking outcome of the Battle of Tsushima in 1905, where a modern Russian battleship fleet was completely destroyed by Japanese naval artillery in a single day. The lesson absorbed by global navies, heavily influenced by British design and training paradigms, was clear. Modern naval wars would be decided by catastrophic fleet actions. In the years leading up to 1914, Royal Navy officers routinely anticipated the day they would meet their primary adversary. Maintaining the capacity for such an engagement required immense material strength. Throughout the late 19th century, this took the form of the pre-dreadnought battleship. However, by the turn of the century, the technology behind the standard pre-dreadnought, characterized by 4 12-inch main guns supplemented by mixed secondary batteries, had become globally standardized. This threatened Britain with a dangerous tactical parity, where an engagement between equal numbers of capital ships would amount to a statistical coin toss, a risk the British Empire could not afford. Although Britain maintained the two-power standard, requiring its fleet to match the combined strength of the next two largest navies, the rapid technological evolution of semi-dreadnoughts by global competitors accelerated the arms race across metallurgy, ballistics, and marine engineering. The British response was an aggressive, asymmetrical technological leap orchestrated by First Sea Lord Jackie Fisher and Chief Constructor William Henry White, utilizing the advanced gunnery principles developed by Percy Scott. The result was HMS Dreadnought, commissioned in 1906. Featuring uniform 12-inch main batteries, turbine propulsion, and a top speed of 22 knots, this single vessel rendered all existing battleships obsolete and ignited a ruinous global naval arms race. The primary challenger in this new arena was the newly unified Imperial German Reich. Under Bismarck, Germany underwent a massive industrial and economic expansion. Initially viewed by Britain as a counterweight to France, Germany quickly evolved into a high-tech economic competitor, capturing the prestigious Blue Ribbon for Atlantic transit and seeking colonial expansion. This economic rivalry made geopolitical friction inevitable, prompting Britain to resolve its long-standing imperial disputes with France and Russia to form the Triple Entente. At the helm of the Imperial German Navy was Grand Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz. Recognizing that the war would be decided in home waters, Tirpitz opposed the construction of an expensive global cruiser fleet, which he viewed as a drain on resources, steel, and trained personnel. Instead, he prioritized a concentrated battle fleet composed of advanced dreadnoughts supported by efficient light cruisers for scouting and large flotillas of torpedo boats. These smaller vessels served as an aggressive testing ground for young officers, fostering rapid tactical decision-making. Tirpitz and Kaiser Wilhelm II understood that matching the sheer numbers of the Royal Navy was mathematically impossible. They therefore formulated the risk theory, Risikogedanke. The doctrine posited that Germany should construct a fleet of sufficient strength that even in defeat, it would inflict such catastrophic damage upon the Royal Navy that Britain's global maritime supremacy would be permanently shattered. This existential threat was intended to deter Britain from entering a continental conflict. The fatal flaw in Tirpitz's calculation lay in predicting British strategy. The Germans assumed the Royal Navy would enforce a close blockade of the German coast, exposing themselves to ambushes by coastal batteries, submarines, and torpedo boats. Instead, the British implemented a distant blockade, sealing the exits of the North Sea from afar. This strategy was made possible by the introduction of a new class of capital ship, the battlecruiser. Conceived by Fisher, the battlecruiser combined the heavy armament of a dreadnought with the high speed of a cruiser, sacrificing armor protection to achieve unprecedented velocity. Ships like HMS Inflexible possessed the speed to hunt down any conventional cruiser and the firepower to destroy them at long range, rendering contemporary vessels like the German armored cruiser Scharnhorst tactically obsolete. However, the battlecruiser possessed an inherent vulnerability. While designed to hunt smaller vessels, naval commanders would inevitably integrate these heavily armed ships into the main line of battle, where their thin armor protection would expose them to catastrophic destruction from heavy-caliber gunfire. Despite this critique, an intense battlecruiser arms race ensued. The British deployed the Invincible and Indefatigable classes, while Germany responded with SMS von der Tann. German designs prioritized structural survivability and heavy armor protection over raw gun caliber, utilizing highly efficient ballistics and superior propellant stability. The British escalated with the larger 13.5-inch gunned Splendid Cats, Lion, Princess Royal, answered by German designs such as Seydlitz and Derflinger. By 1914, however, the quantitative advantage rested heavily with Great Britain, which possessed 9 operational battle cruisers in the North Sea against Germany's 4. This numerical superiority allowed the Royal Navy to maintain its distant blockade without exposing its main dreadnought fleet to the hazards of the German coast. Instead, they deployed an outer screen of submarines, destroyers, and light cruisers across the Heligoland Bight to monitor German movements, backed by the rapid intervention capability of the battle cruiser squadrons. By late August 1914, the strategic situation on land was critical for the Entente, with the German right wing advancing rapidly through Belgium. To secure vital coastal ports and divert German attention, the British planned a marine landing at Ostend, requiring a significant naval diversion in the North Sea to suppress German naval activity. Commodore Roger Keyes, commanding the British submarine force, identified a predictable pattern in the German defensive patrols within the Heligoland Bight, specifically during the morning relief rotations. The British formulated an operation to ambush these patrol forces during low tide, when the heavy German capital ships in the Jade estuary would be unable to cross the sandbars to assist. The British committed overwhelming force. Vice Admiral David Beattie's 1st Battle Cruiser Squadron, Rear Admiral Moore's battle cruisers, Commodore Goodenough's light cruisers, and multiple destroyer flotillas under Commodore Reginald Tyrwhitt, operating alongside Keyes submarines. On the morning of August 28th, the North Sea was obscured by a dense, low-lying fog, reducing visibility to less than 4 miles and concealing the British approach from the German coastal fortifications on Heligoland Island. At 5 a.m., a British submarine initiated contact by firing upon a German destroyer. Though the torpedoes missed, the alarm was raised, prompting the German command to dispatch the light cruisers Stettin and Frauenlob to reinforce the outer screen. By 7 a.m., Tyrwhitt's destroyers, led by the light cruiser Arethusa, engaged the retreating German patrol vessels. In the ensuing chaotic engagement, Stettin briefly intervened before disappearing into the fog. Concurrently, Frauenlob engaged the technologically superior but tactically inexperienced crew of Arethusa, inflicting 25 hits, disabling the majority of her armament and forcing both vessels to disengage. Amid the confusion, the isolated German destroyer V-187 was cornered and sunk by the British light cruisers Nottingham and Lowestoft. During the subsequent rescue operations, Stettin reappeared and opened fire, scattering the British destroyers. A surfaced British submarine subsequently provided the remaining German survivors with provisions and a heading to land before submerging. The pervasive fog severely degraded British command and control. Unaware of presence of friendly surface ships, Commodore Keyes mistook British light cruisers as hostile vessels, initiating a series of maneuvers that resulted in near misses and reciprocal friendly fire threats between British cruisers and submarines. As the morning progressed, the German command committed a critical tactical error, dispatching light cruisers, including Strasbourg, Stettin, and Mainz, into the battle zone piecemeal, without centralized coordination or awareness of the true scale of the British force. By 11:30 a.m., Tyrwhitt's battered forces were heavily engaged and requested immediate reinforcement. Faced with the risk of encountering mines, submarines, or late-arriving German capital ships, Admiral David Beatty made the critical operational decision to commit his heavy battlecruisers into the shallow, fog-shrouded waters of the Bight. Prior to Beatty's arrival, Goodenough's light cruisers intercepted and disabled the steering gear of SMS Mainz. The German vessel fought until her batteries were silenced, ultimately capsizing after sustaining a torpedo hit. At 12:30 p.m., the fog partially cleared as Beatty's first battlecruiser squadron arrived on the scene. The introduction of 13.5-inch capital ship artillery altered the engagement completely. SMS Köln was immediately engaged by HMS Lion and sustained catastrophic damage while attempting to withdraw. Shortly thereafter, the elderly German cruiser Ariadne was intercepted and reduced to a burning wreck by heavy-caliber armor-piercing shells, sinking shortly after slipping back into the mist. Aware that the rising tide would soon permit the heavy German battleships to exit the Jade, Beatty ordered a general withdrawal. During the retirement, HMS Lion re-engaged the crippled Köln, sinking her with point-blank salvos. Only a single survivor from her entire complement was later recovered. By 14 p.m., the engagement concluded. The tactical outcome was stark. Germany lost 3 light cruisers and 1 destroyer, suffering over 1,000 casualties and hundreds captured. The Royal Navy suffered no ship losses and minimal fatalities. Strategically, the operation achieved its objective, providing a significant morale boost to the Western Allies during a period of severe reverses on land. While the British operational concept was sound, its tactical execution revealed profound systemic flaws in gunnery, communications, and inter-service coordination, defects that were largely ignored in the celebratory aftermath. Conversely, the German Navy immediately enacted rigorous defensive reforms, incorporating aerial reconnaissance, substituting vulnerable torpedo boats with armed trawlers, and upgrading light cruiser armament to 150mm batteries. The unlearned lessons of Heligoland Bight would remain unaddressed by the Royal Navy, setting the stage for more costly confrontations later in the conflict.